Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Resource Gatherer podcast. We are your three co-hosts. I'm Justin. This is Shaizon. That is Cody. We're going to be doing another episode of the Resource Gatherer podcast. Remember to check us out every Friday as we continue to try to create content for your asses. On that note, we're going to go ahead and talk about this week's cool topic. Continue where we left off last week, diving into anime, storytelling, and a little bit of just nonsense and bullshit. Get ready for this week's episode. Do-do-do. So, let's start off with a sort of controversial question, guys. Living here in the United States, I'm going to ask you guys, sub or dub?
Cody.
Man, why I gotta go first? Dude, I'm dub, man. Like I all day. I'm sorry. I like to be able to just sit down and watch. I don't want to have to like read as well as I have to, figure it out. Plus, to me, like the voices, just I don't know, it makes it smoother for me in the transition.
Do you believe that? Or do you believe it? Or because I will tell you right now, the American Naruto's believe it every 25 fucking seconds, or Asta's you're right.
You're right.
No, I get what you're saying, but like for me, I don't know. I can just listen to it. I mean, like even when I'm at work, dude, I just pop in an AirPod and I just listen to it, and like I don't need to watch it. Like I can just like relive it, like visually. I've seen it so much.
Hold on. You're audio booking anime. That's fucking insane,
dude. It's easy, man. It's like 8 hours worth of work. You
Once
just pop
there
it in
was
your
a
ear,
fight,
you gotta listen to it.
Two fists clashed
man.
for 25 minutes. Cody,
how do you listen to fights? Yeah, that's yeah. How do you listen to fights?
You kind of just like skip it sometimes because it's just so much.
You skip the fights, bro. Dude, we're gonna lose fans
because all you're
from Cody.
No, when you're just listening to it, because all you're listening is just pop.
All right. Shaizon, give us your viewpoints.
See, I'm about to be even worse. I like manga. I don't watch anime that much anymore.
Oh, you're a real fucking poser.
I'm a huge
reader.
I'm actually elite. No, I'm playing.
So okay, so then reading. What apps do you use? Do you read for?
Those are the ancient thing called
I'm an illegal guy. Yeah.
Well, see, like they have Viz Media.
I do still go out to like.
So do you have hard copies?
I go to Barnes and Noble and buy them. Yeah.
So like, how many volumes of like your favorite series do you have?
Oh my god, a lot of. Right now, I've been reading Jujutsu Kaisen, Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone is surprisingly good, but a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so I will give you guys a very, very controversial answer. I am on the spectrum of I like sub over dub. Mm-hmm. However, if I've already watched the anime, I will put dub on. Mm-hmm. I will put on the subtitles. So that way, when I'm reading it, it's in English, and I could just sit there and watch and read it in English. That way, whenever I'm like chilling and I just like want some downtime, but I want to also just like sit there and watch something. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if I want to watch Hunter x Hunter again for like the 18th time, right? Yeah. Or Haiku for like the 20th time, right? Yeah. I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to put on the English version. I'm going to have the subtitles on so I can read the words and just kind of just sit there and like mind meld for like after work when I'm bullshitting.
That sounds insane. I'll be honest with you. That's worse than fucking audio booking it.
Hey man, dude, try it. When you're at work and you're just kind of chilling out by yourself and you're just gonna pop in there, you can just listen to something.
Okay, let me ask you this though. Like, okay, so if you're ever on like social media, right? So if you see someone video, if you have two of the exact same video, one of them has subtitles at the bottom, one of them does not. Which one do you generally watch more of than the other?
Fuck, dude, you're right.
So the reason why, and you'll see this in all of our social media moving forward, like the one that I just released this week.
Yeah.
Everything moving forward is going to always have subtitles at the bottom because everyone learns differently, right? Mm-hmm. So like I'm very much an audio visual see. So if I can see the words, I can read it in my head, and that's how I can process it faster.
I see.
Versus like not everyone's like visual learner. So if you're looking at like how people, so like Cody clearly is an audio learner.
Oh, all day.
Yeah. Where
my recall is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Versus like I have like really shitty like short term, so I have to rewatch shit like 8 times.
Yeah.
And that's why I but I love watching updated series. So it's like I always watch it in sub, so I can like keep up to date like what is it, like the new like that sensei one, like where he's magical isekai that's really really good right now. It's like Mushin something.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Bro, it's so good,
that one
and
is
it's
really
like,
good, yeah.
I mean, granted, it's like kind of wild, like, it's a little spice,
Yeah. It's
but like,
definitely for a more veteran anime.
but like, it's so good because it's like it follows the traditional, or like Shield Hero too. Even like it has that same flow where I was like, oh, I'm actually surprised. Like it follows the BS. I'm an isekai hero. I'm gonna go ahead and have my harem, but also like,
yeah.
I'm gonna actually have an interesting plot and character development.
Do something actually cool throughout the story.
Yeah, like, and that kind of falls back into what we were talking about last week. Like, even though it's a magical world, do we really care what continent he's on? We just care about the character development, right? Like,
that's pretty fair,
So, like,
yeah.
so not every story needs you to have the focal point be the background. It's just like cool extra fluff.
That's what I was about to say. Definitely with isekai.
Yeah, especially like isekai anime. Everyone's just like, oh, it's really like visually beautiful, breathtaking.
Wow. You know what? Now I think I am kind of agreeing with Cody's point last week. You're right, because oh my God, yeah, because Konosuba, oh my God, I love that anime.
Yeah.
And it's literally the background doesn't matter at all.
Exactly.
It's just a fantasy.
see what I mean?
Yeah, generic fantasy world.
It's like, it literally, you could put it inside of like a school.
yeah, and it would do the same thing. And I'd be like, I love this anime. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like some of my favorite anime is just like it literally takes place in just one place. And they're like, okay, for example, Byakuman, which is like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
The one about manga. Do you think their interesting backdrop is like, oh, we're in a cool fantasy world? No, they're in a fucking normal ass house in middle school. But I'm so invested in the characters' like love cycle. I'm like, I really want you to get this girl, bro.
happen? Yeah.
And I'm like, get her.
Look at any type of battle manga where it is literally just they're out in the middle of nowhere, like
Yeah.
a desert almost.
You're right.
Yeah,
And they're fighting.
Yeah, you just
You
like-
know, every once in a while they mix it up and they go out to like a plains where it's just snows everywhere. I'm like, this is the same thing. You just use white instead of brown.
That's
Like,
very true.
Oh yeah, literally like every anime movie ever is just like, okay, well, I know that the main plot is basically this. For example, let's go to the Naruto movies, right? Naruto movies, there's a whole one where it's like a fantasy night world. We do not see that fantasy night world
Yes.
outside of that movie world at all.
Oh no, you're not wrong. And then the final battle's like a barren land where the two main characters have like destroyed everything. You're like, what the hell?
You're like, what land is this, bro? 'Cause, I mean, we don't talk about it in the.
That's very true.
And the rest
they
of the
don't use
series-
the environment well. I will say that. Yes.
So then we were talking about movies. Like, what do you guys think of anime adaptations of movies that aren't necessarily like live action, but like actual anime movies that have nothing to do with the plot?
Most of the time, I think they're just a waste of time. To be honest, unless it depends. I will say that because was it the Dragon Ball Super one? That was great. I loved that
Resurrection
one.
F, yeah, because that is what led into that series, and then they spawned the whole series off it. Like they actually redid the movie and they just split it up into like a couple episodes.
So sometimes it's worth it.
And the same thing would happen if we went to Demon Slayer. Like Demon Slayer movies were just basically they were elongated episodes, and they just gave us like huge. Yeah, see, I got you. You think I'm not gonna pull up the back of your
Demon
cranium?
Slayer?
He's
But
over
like,
here reading too many books, man. He ain't going to the movies no more.
I read the book instead.
oh no, what I do is I will go on Amazon and I'll wait for that movie that'll say home release, and I'll watch the movie theater version. But like for $30, I'll just be like, rather than spending $15 on popcorn and whatever, and then an $8 ticket or whatever, and basically spending $25 for $30, I now own this movie. And I'm like, versus the 22 to rent it or whatever. So I'm like, I'll just buy this piece of shit.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll watch it twice and I'll get my money's
For
out.
like a split second, I thought he was going to be like, I actually buy the book, then I go to the movie theater and read it while watching. I was going to be like, what the fuck?
Hey, listen,
That's
you
the
probably haven't
ultimate,
been, you haven't been
That's
to
the
enough
ultimate
Comic Cons.
sub, okay? There are no more powerful sub than reading the book while watching the movie. Like, gotta.
Oh no, that's compare and contrast,
Right,
And then you look at him and go, the book is better.
Right. Someone just throws popcorn. Oh, man.
So that kind of leads into like the idea. So obviously in anime or even just in other story mediums, they obviously have these books that they're basing it off of. And we've done that with comic books. We've talked about a little bit with video games or et cetera. They have these like large form mediums and they're trying to dissect them into a 2-hour movie. Obviously that doesn't work out a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And Cody and I talked about this on a previous episode, and we think that TV is going to be like the next wave of like the big things because people are going less and less to the movies. People are looking less and less for a 2-hour getaway and more looking for a 10-episode binge.
Oh, God. Yeah, that is very true.
Well, it's either a binge or it's like a weekly thing, where they're like, okay, Wednesday, the new episode of.
And it gives you 8 weeks of content, and that's 8 weeks of talking points that make you socially relevant if you're running a social media platform like we are.
And it also makes you think in the meantime. It's like, oh man, like what could happen? Or why do you think this guy's like this? You know, or why do you think this girl is so like crazy like this? You know?
Yeah, I think like the Mandalorian drops were really good. I think Ahsoka's on right now. Like Ahsoka's drop every week.
See, I don't like that though. I like you give me either you give me it all or you don't give me it all.
And see, I agree with that, and I think it's kind of silly that they do the weekly. But the reason they do that is because these platforms are obviously they want the money, right? So if I have you for 10 weeks, that I know that the game. Let's talk about House of Dragons, right?
Yeah.
Everyone downloaded HBO Max because of House of Dragons, and then we stayed for Last of Us, and then after Last of Us, all of us
I
were
didn't
like,
stay for Last of Us. Controversial opinion. I hate Last of Us. I don't like it.
I thought it was okay.
No, not the show. I mean, I don't like the games. I think it's generic, and I think.
No, I thought the show was like okay at best. I thought like it followed the story, it followed the game, but I was just like, this is so boring.
Yeah.
Like,
but why were you bored? Is it because you've already played the games and you already
never played the game.
Oh, so then
Insane.
My kid played the games, and he was like, "Oh, this is just like it," and stuff like that. You know, and like everyone else I talked to that played the games, like, "Oh, dude, this is so realistic, so close to it." And I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, I'm like,
This is boring.
this is like literally watching The Walking Dead all over again.
Yeah.
Like to me,
That's
the
fair.
most interesting part about it was it's a different type of zombies. You know, like the shriekers or
Barely
whatever.
any
it's
zombies in the show, though.
but you only see them once or twice. It's more of a people problem, which is what I can see the world being like that, like in a post-apocalyptic world almost. Like the people are worse than the monsters. So
I mean, people are the monsters.
people are the
exactly.
monsters.
That's socialism at its best. But yeah, so I could see because I don't know, like I never played the Witcher games, right? And so like I tried watching the Witcher show, and I was just like,
You didn't like it?
no, I couldn't get through episode like 3 or 4 because I was so fucking confused.
And I'm gonna say, yes, that show fucking sucks.
Listen, like it was so, and the problem is because I don't know all the backstory, and they're cutting from person to person, and apparently there's like a 10 or 20 year gap.
Yeah,
between these
and
things.
I'm gonna be honest with you, even though I was watching, I was super confused because I played the games, but I didn't read the books, so I was like, "Fuck's happening?" And then apparently that didn't happen. It's the showrunners of the whole thing.
Yeah. They basically fucked the pooch, and then Henry Cavill was like, "Listen, if you're gonna fuck my
How do you
favorite
ruin
game-"
such a sexy man with white hair and you just fuck it all up? It's crazy.
I mean, if Henry Cavill's your type, bro, we got you.
Oh, my fault, yeah.
It's all right, bro. Hey, listen, you know, everyone's got their type. Mine's Jensen Ackles.
But for example, though, with like but what you just said, though, with like Witcher, like how they released that, because I think the Boys doesn't do it like that either. Since you brought up him.
So
It
so
is segments.
if we're talking about like stuff that is different, right? So like if you do something exactly of, people are like, yes, you got it right. For example, One Piece. One Piece is pretty close to like the anime / manga adaptation. They changed a few elements for whatever.
I like that they did that.
But those elements, I think, were the most interesting elements of the story because you're like, okay, well, I was expecting this, I wanted this, blah, 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 blah. But like, then let's go back into The Last of Us. Everyone was like, oh, this is a shot for shot. And some of the things they did differently or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure, fine, whatever. I think that the biggest thing that people try to do, and this is maybe just people in the creative field, because, you know, I'm in that field. We always want to put our own spin on shit, right? Like, we don't want to just be like, well, I want to recreate something because everyone's already seen it. So, like, Harry Potter, for example, the biggest, like, meme is, like, what is it? His professor, whatever, was like, did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire from the books? But in the movies, he's like, did you put your fucking name in the Goblet of Fire?
yeah, just to add that extra to it. Yeah.
I mean, like that was an intense part in the book. You know, it was like just so confusing. But yeah, like I mean, there are so many adaptations because, like we talked about before, like if you know all the background and everything like this because you've read the books, you've watched the movies, you know, you've done all this stuff, you played the games, and then they finally make this new medium that comes out for it, and you're like, wow, this is terrible. Well, it's because you are nitpicking it like to the ground. Like, I don't know, I get made fun of all this time because like we just talked about, I listen to stuff nonstop. Like I can recall very well. You want to know what my biggest pet peeve is?
What?
Dragon Ball Z to Dragon Ball Z Kai. When Gohan is like 3.5 years old, 4.5 years old, and he's meeting all of Goku's friends and everything like that, and Bulma's like, oh, she's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? In the original one, he says an orthopedist.
Yes.
And the new one, in the Kai, he goes a scientist.
Yeah.
And that bugs the ever-loving shit out of me. Because I'm like, seriously? Like, we couldn't just keep some things simple?
So wait. So would that be more of in like them just dubbing it, or would that be more of them like
It's just simple things like people like me or like, you know, other people like that, you watch and you know every detail of everything of it. Yeah. And then when they try to diverge like
from
anything on it, like you can get criticized for it. Like for me, that's just a pet peeve. I'm like, it's one word, you couldn't do it, but why does that stick to me? I have no idea.
Yeah, but the thing is, you have to do it tastefully, though.
Yeah, so
that one's just a random nitpicking.
I'm well aware.
So, for example, like there are transitions, and this goes back to like the beginning comment I had. Transitions between dub and sub, right? Yeah. If you look at like the text, and this is why I read some of the times, the reading of the audio for the English versions has the actual Japanese audio dub. So you'll be looking at it and be like, they changed like 8 or 9 words, and you're like, why did they do that? And it's because it made more sense
in English.
Or like sometimes like there's this one anime that I saw a bunch of memes for where like the Japanese version is just like, why are you running? And they're like, they said something funny, but then like the American version was just like so much more dark where they're like, oh haha, like it's because he's like a black dude or something, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, and they're like,
that was from Super.
From
the Super series when they're like, because remember Goku was fighting Goku Black.
Oh yeah,
and he was Goku Black. They called him Black all the time, you know. And so it was like all these people had these guns up, and like, don't shoot, he's not black.
Yeah,
you know. And in English, like that looks terrible, you know. But like how it writes out, like you know, in Japanese, it's like it's you know very normal. Really have that, but like. I'm like, yeah, you guys really got to work on your writing skills over here. Maybe pick a different color, make them like Goku pink, Goku blue, yellow. I mean, something here, man. Like,
well, and that goes back to like translations, right? Like, how do you? Not everything's always translate correctly. For example, jokes. One of the biggest things is sarcasm. Sarcasm does not transfer if you transfer from English to, like, say, if we dub this into Spanish, I don't think half the jokes would land nearly as hard.
Yes,
And granted, I don't think people are actually laughing with us or laughing at us, but like, because we're fucking a bunch of nerds in a dungeon. But like,
help us,
mother,
mother, please.
Mom, will you do my laundry,
please? The meatloaf.
Yeah. Where's my Mountain Dew?
I got you right over here, bro.
Right.
But so let's start going into essentially the differences between the story points, right? So like we talked about The Witcher, we talked about these other games of how they sort of butchered shit and it fucked it up,
yes,
right?
Very
and we
bad.
get pissed off. I think that there's always the two groups, right? The people who are like, it wasn't enough like what I wanted, and then the people who are like, oh, I'm basically just rewatching it. If I think that for most of the mediums of people who are doing these visual arts, they have to build for a general audience. And so they know that they have their diehard fans and they're going to try to give them those little sprinkles and nuggets or whatever, right? But like the main thing is they have to give a general audience an entire book or movie or video games worth of content in like, what, an hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, and that's hard.
It's hard as fuck, which is why I was saying, like, when you're looking at it from like a story perspective, that's why I think the episodic versions of storytelling is working.
No, you're 100% because they get to add that all.
Well, they also have 10 hours of content versus 2, right? So like if I have 10 hours worth of content, but granted, sometimes they still fuck it up. Like let's look at like the 10 hours of content or whatever for the new like Captain America TV show or whatever. Like absolutely. They absolutely ate up episodes on just political bullshit that didn't matter.
I don't know what was going on with that show, man.
But it's not. It's not the first like ball drop. Like let's go. Like you can look at like a lot of the Disney products when they try to make television shows.
She-Hulk.
Dude.
Yeah, they made She-Hulk into like a meme basically. Which granted
she is, but she's not.
Yeah,
at the same time,
she's Deadpool without the extra steps.
But she's way cooler, you know.
But also like, and they also like just
yeah.
belittled like Hulk in that too. They're like made him like a little bitch boy. Like,
see, She-Hulk is just supposed to be different. I don't know. That show just
no, I actually
it was okay, but I wasn't like blown away. Like it didn't grip me.
The jokes were too.
My biggest thing when they do all this stuff is rewatchability.
Yes,
you know, if I cannot go back, like if I watch a series and I go, okay, that was cool. Because I'm a big proponent of going back and watching shows. And I'm not just talking about like animes and different things like that. Yeah. You know, like one of my favorite TV shows of all time is Home Improvement. You know, I go back.
Bro, you're really aging yourself here, bro.
Yeah, guys. I'm over 30. I'm sorry.
Now, you know.
But I'm saying like it's got rewatchability, you know, and that's the stuff I look for. Like if I can go back and watch it again and either catch something, like for me, one of my favorite things is foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Okay, this makes sense. Oh, okay, this makes sense. And you listen to the things that like some characters say and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because there's probably 3 or 4 different times like inside like the Dragon Ball arc when it's like Master Roshi, Mr. Popo, even like Tien Shinhan, they all say it like you might think you're the best now, but there's somebody out there stronger.
Yeah, and you go back and watch that, and you're like, "Yo, it was Piccolo."
Well, and then people keep coming back and stuff like that.
Well, see, my issue though is I think you're also thinking about it from a very different style of standpoint, right? So, like, let's talk about how Japan and how America view television. So, America views television as a product, right? Its rewatchability is the most important element to most American television, which is why you have 30-minute segments. For example, the most popular shows from American television are things that you can rewatch. For example, The Simpsons.
Yep.
America, it's been around for, it's like the longest running fucking television show.
Outside of like some random soap opera, you know, for, our grandparents.
So I'm going to stick with The Simpsons on this analysis, right? So The Simpsons ideology is every week you're going to watch content. There's going to be things that have like transverse, but then we're also going to have to basically rewrite. We're going to have to rescript because we get, so many arcs in, and eventually we just have to like restart from scratch. Yeah. So look at Rick and Morty, for example. Rick and Morty would be like a perfect example. Like they have a lot of canonic events that are like, okay, these are cool story points, like Evil Morty, right? We're going to get the buildup of Evil Morty, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, how do we sell this for another 12 seasons from a budget? Versus Japan. Japan's ideology is we want to get as many views the week that it comes out. So like Japan doesn't even give a shit about the American audience. I mean, granted, they understand that the aftermarket processing of how we like become in, and like obviously our liking of things pushes it into like more popular mediums in other countries.
100%. Yeah.
But Japan's main focal point is Japan. So they're like, hey, by the way, our local audience of like, we want to get this 8 p.m. like slot. Their television show of like this anime needs to run every week at this spot. The reason they need that is because they need to be able to get those numbers.
Yeah.
And and they go back to like the old school early 2000s way of approaching television, like Samurai Jack.
Was the shit.
Dude,
We don't see shows like that anymore because companies realize that it's way easier to sell something where the story doesn't matter which episode you jump into. All I need to sell you on is the idea of this is a character, this is the plot. You leave happy regardless of where you jump in. So when we do these reruns, and we're going to run them every day so we can get our money out of them after they pay the initial actors the one time, and then they pay them in residuals by like a very small margin. The studio is going to continue to get that value, and that's where they're pushing for. Where these other animes are like, no, we just need the initial value, and we'll just continue to like sell that product, and then we'll go for merchandising.
Makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense. But I don't know. I kind of miss the those cartoons though. You're right. That
like what the Toonami era,
like where it was just like each episode was just some random shit, and you're just like, why did you get from
Titans,
there to there?
Like look at Teen Titans. Like even though every episode was unique,
it still has some type of
it had an arc. So like
it was cool. Yeah,
I really liked the season arc style where it was like the first episode and the last episode basically like triggered into, or the last episode was a 2-parter.
But the rest were kind of just like little fun fillers.
Yeah, you get like
you still get little crumbs, breadcrumbs.
Yeah, so like Ben Tennyson, right? So like
Ben 10 was the shit.
Yeah, right. That was like
you guys are showing your age.
I know, right?
Listen, I'm in both realms, all right. Yeah. But like Ben 10, for example, was probably one of my favorite shows, and it's because it came out when I was probably like 10 or 11, so I was like old enough to understand that it, like this was an anime style thing. I was like huge into anime, living in Japan.
That was the shit.
And then it like came out, and it was like every episode was like, okay, it's a unique episode where we're gonna focus on like one of Ben's 10 different aliens. But then as the seasons progress, you're like, oh my gosh, like it continues to build, especially like OG Ben. Like not even gonna go into Alien X and all that bullshit.
Hard though.
Yeah, it does go hard, but like I liked how it continued through that style. Where I miss that style from America, where we're not gonna have that style unless
for a minute. We're not going to get that back, I don't think, for a long time.
Well, I don't know. So I think with the progressions of like animation styles, with like Avatar getting its huge like resurge back in like the COVID era.
That's true. That's true.
And I think like things like Vox Machina getting really popular. Like people are more inclined to realize that animation isn't dead. It's just so expensive. So a lot of people don't want to spend the money on it here in the United States.
It makes good money though.
But it's because in America it has this sort of connotation that it's made for children, where in Japan they've associated it with like every age group has their series. Even like grown 50-year-old women they have a series for you.
No, that's 100%. That is very
I
true.
mean, and that's like one of my big things is like growing up. Like I remember like when Adult Swim first came out, like like it had like the grown up cartoons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you guys were nowhere near old enough to be able to stay up and watch Megas
I still
XLR.
watched it. though.
Hey, I did watch Mega XLR. So
You know what that is?
What is it?
Mega X.
Why does that sound super
Megas
familiar?
XLR.
Is it like a?
It's
That
an,
sounds so
okay, so
familiar.
it's this big chunkier dude. He has like Coop. He is basically like
Hillbilly Mechanic.
yeah, and he takes his car and he basically finds this robot. And
Does he make it into? Yes,
Yes.
I do remember this.
yeah.
that shit was so fire.
Yes, I do. I was like, this
Those are
sounds
the
so
wildest
familiar.
shows ever. I
There was
remember,
also another show that came out during that same time though. It was like they were aliens from a different planet and they got like other things, but that one might have been Cartoon Network. But I do remember that one.
Yeah.
Dude,
Dude, that was a great show. I remember
was a
watching. I'm like,
great-
dude, this is awesome. Like, why aren't there more
that was
shows
on Adult
like this?
Swim.
Yeah,
It was like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
I think we understand what we're going to talk about for next week's episode. It's going to be retro television.
Yes. Oh man.
Which we can,
Bring back
if you guys want to do another one,
Yeah.
yeah. But so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get ready to close this one out. Thank you guys for listening. Again, we are down the rabbit hole of conversation every time we come in here. So thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next week on the Resource Gather podcast.
Konnichiwa.